So you are wanting to buy a grain mill and start your milling journey by milling those grains and baking that delicious bread. But before investing in a grain mill and purchasing one for yourself, there are some things that you need to know. Hey y'all, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and on this channel, we talk all things real whole grains, all from a biblical perspective. I teach you all about milling your grains, baking with those grains, and more. Now, I have actually been milling for well over a decade, so trust me, I have experience with grain mills. And so there's some things that I've learned about grain mills that I'm wanting to impart to you to help you make the decision whenever purchasing a grain mill, because I understand that it can be a little overwhelming deciding which grain mill to get. Now, also with the experience of milling, I not only own these 3 grain mills, I actually own a total of 5 grain mills, some that I've definitely tried, and I've definitely learned a thing or two. So again, I know that shopping, because it is an investment, it can be overwhelming, and you may just wonder, especially when you just don't know what you don't know necessarily what grain mill you actually may be wanting and what will actually work for you and your situation and your family. Good news is it really boils down to one basic question, or 1 to 2 basic questions that you need to ask yourself. But before we get into that one important question, we're going to talk about a few of the little things to consider when deciding on what grain mill to get. Now, first of all, the categories that grain mills fall into. There are just 3 main categories that all the grain mills fall into. The first one are your impact grain mills. These are ones like your Wonder Mill, your Nutrimill Impact, and your Nutrimill Classic. Those are the most popular impact mills on the market. And what those do is they basically have steel burrs on the inside that spin really, really fast. And those grains basically impact and burst into fine flour. Now with your impact mills, you're not going to be able to get coarse grains or cracked grains. It's basically just good fine flour every single time, pretty easy. The second category are your stone grind mills, like your Nutrimill Harvest, the Mock Mill, and the Como Mill being the most popular stone grind mills on the market these days. And as the name implies, this is more of the traditional way that we have been grinding grains for thousands of years, just on a much smaller scale. And it's where you actually have 2 millstones that are together, and those grind together in order to give you your flour. Now, the beauty of the stone grind mills is that you can do cracked grains all the way to fine flour and everywhere in between. So you do have more versatility with those grain mills. And then the third category are your hand grind mills. I actually have 2 of those, the manual mills. I don't have them out because they take some, I don't use them regularly, but the beauty of the manual mills, as it implies, is you don't need electricity in order to run them. They are very manual and you hand crank them. Now, many of the manual mills, you can buy attachments to say hook up a drill or maybe to a bicycle or something like that to power it yourself. So for those of you who really want that off-grid solution, those are great. And the most popular ones on the market are the Wonder Junior Deluxe Grain Mill, which is what I have, as well as really expensive ones like the Diamine, which is a different type of technology with the wheel. Now, these manual mills are generally a lot like these stone grind mills in technology, where it's usually stones that are grinding together. And so the manual mills also give you the versatility of doing cracked grains all the way to coarse grain, to fine flour, and everywhere in between. The other advantage of manual grain mills, depending on which one you get, is you can actually, they many times have steel burrs or other type of stones that you can use for wet grains. So you can also grind coffee, make peanut butter, masa harina, those type of things that are wet. Where your typical grain mills like your impact and your stone grind mills, these are only for dry grains. You don't put anything wet in these grain mills ever. So those are just the 3 main categories. With all the grain mills you see, those are just the 3 that they're just gonna fall into. The second thing to consider whenever purchasing a grain mill is your space and also possibly the aesthetic that you are going for. So as you can see here, each of these particular grain mills, different sizes, different height. This one has 2 pieces, so it comes here. This is the Wonder Mill. This stone grind mills, one thing to consider is you usually have to provide your own sort of bowl to capture the grains, where your impact grain mills already have a hopper that go with it. So in case I didn't mention this, this is the Wonder Mill. This is Miss Wanda, and this is the Nutri-Mill Impact Grain Mill. Miss Irene, I think is what I have chosen to name her. This is the Nutri-Mill Harvest, or Miss Nancy is her name. So yes, I name my grain mills. You have to, right? But as you can see, they all look different. So as far as if you plan on saying stored under your cabinets, the height requirement may be something to consider, or maybe the width, especially those of y'all who might have tiny kitchens, or maybe you want to put it away in a drawer or a cupboard, making sure that it will fit. So all of those specs, no matter what grain mill that you want to purchase, just go to the specs and they will all tell you the height, the width, and the depth of those grain mills. The second thing is the aesthetics. So as you can see, the Nutri-Mill Harvest has this beautiful wood. This is a bamboo outer layer, and it absolutely is a definitely more beautiful, eye-pleasing grain mill. And that's generally what the stone grind mills are. The exception would be the Mock-Mill 100 and Mock-Mill 200, where they're a bit more of the industrial type look that the impact mills have. But that is an option if you really want something pretty to look at in your kitchen, which is totally legit and many people want. Then a stone grind mill is probably going to be your best bet, because these impact mills, they are workhorses for sure. They will do a wonderful job, but they're not as pretty to look at. Another thing to consider, and this is especially important for those of you who might have more of an off-grid type setting, or say solar power, you really want to watch your power that you use. Just know that your impact grain mills use considerably more wattage than your stone grind mills. So your impact grain mills can range anywhere from 1200 to 1500 watts when using them. Now the beauty of that is these things will get you fine flour very, very quickly. So they are faster as far as milling the grains into fine flour. Contrast to your stone grind grain mills that generally use around 450 watts of power. And it does make it where it is going to be a bit slower in order to grind it. And then of course your manual mills are no power whatsoever. So you may live, as many of us do, on the electric grid, and it really doesn't matter. But for those of you that it matters, those are things to consider. Now, a note about the noise and the level of sound with these grain mills. Your manual mills are obviously the most quiet. They are the quietest mills. You'll still hear that grinding sound as you are grinding, but it's minus the electric sounds that come with the grain mills. So as far as your impact grain mills, these are pretty loud. They sound like a small aircraft taking off, not that bad, but they do have more of that very high whiny, pitch when they start up. So they are louder. Compared to my stone grind mill, when I turn her on, she's actually pretty quiet until I start grinding the grains. And then whenever you hear that, it's not as high pitch of a sound. It's just the sound of grains grinding under stones. So if you are very, very sensitive to very loud, like those higher pitch sounds, you're gonna wanna stay away from an impact mill and probably go with a stone grind mill for the sake of your hearing. Again, it's not bad. It's not like it's going on for hours, but some people are very sensitive when it comes to auditory sounds. So something to consider. Okay, so we're on number four, I think. I can't remember. Whatever number we are on, the next thing to consider is, for some people, it is very important if your product is USA made, or like made in the United States, or is a United States owned company, because not all the grain mills are the same. Now, for those of you who don't care whatsoever, you can skip this part. But just know that the companies like Nutrimill and Wondermill are USA-based companies. They generally put their mills together. They do assemble their grain mills here in the United States, but I have confirmed with Nutrimill, and I'm assuming Wondermill as well, because they have LG motors, that parts may come from outside the United States, but assembly generally happens in the United States. But as far as the companies, they are based here in the US. Contrast to your Como grain mills and your Mockmill, which are German-based companies. So everything is done over there in Germany, and then it's shipped over to the United States. And that is why whenever those grain mills go out of stock, it can be a while before they come back in stock. So if you're really wanting something now and you see that those particular mills are out of stock, many times I've noticed we don't necessarily know when they're going to come back in stock. So if you're wanting, and those are just the stone grind mills, the Como and the Mockmill are stone grind mills. That's why I love the fact that Nutrimill has their own, because these are usually much easier to get a hold of, because they're right here in the United States. Now, for my international audience members, the Mockmill and Como mill may work better for you, because they'll be easier to get for you than the ones here manufactured or produced in the United States. All right, the next thing to consider is, of course, the price. And I know that's a huge consideration for many, many people. So do know that the cheapest grain mill out on the market, besides like your really cheap manual grain mills, is actually the Nutrimill Impact grain mill. I did a review all about this. She is new on the market, and you know what? She gets the job done. She's a good grain mill. I would say an excellent starter grain mill if you're kind of unsure how much you're going to get into this, but she does the job very well. And she is the cheapest one, the most budget friendly, I should say, on the market without sacrificing quality. The next ones is the regular impact mills are usually also the next tier up. The Wondermill, the Nutrimill Classic are kind of the next tier up. And your stone grind mills are usually the more expensive ones that you can purchase on the market. It also depends on what size. I've really known the price difference being for the stone grind mills. You can get some all the way up that are like $700, $800. It really just depends on what you're looking for, because there is a lot of variety in the stone grind, in the stone mill world. And so you can see the prices here range from anywhere from like $200 all the way up to like $700, $800, all depending on the type of grain mill to get. Now do know that Nutrimill frequently has sales for their grain mills and their mixers. And they are the only company that I always have a coupon code for y'all. So even if it's not on sale, you at least have a coupon code to knock off 20 bucks from your order, which is wonderful. So Nutrimill is great at providing a lot of opportunities to save money, where contrast to Wondermill, I rarely ever see go on sale. Wondermill, you don't actually purchase from them directly. They're always through distributors like Pleasant Hill Grain, Breadbeckers, those type of people if you're looking at the Wondermill. And I rarely ever see those go on sale. If they do go on sale, it is through the distributor directly. So Pleasant Hill Grain decides to have a sale, or maybe Breadbeckers. So that's the thing with that. Your stone grind mills, I also rarely ever see Mockmill or Como mill go on sale either. I rarely see it. So if you're wanting the Wondermill, the Como mill, and the Mockmill, just go ahead and get it. Don't worry about waiting around for a sale, because who knows when it's going to come up, if there is one in the near future. Now, that's a great thing about making sure that you subscribe to this channel on YouTube and sign up for my newsletter, because anytime that there are sales, especially on grain mills and mixers, those high ticket items, I let you know as soon as possible. I also post it over on Instagram as well. You can follow me there at Grains and Grit. Hey, really quick, we need to stop here before we get to the main question that you need to ask yourself when purchasing a grain mill. We're going to hear from today's sponsors, which is 4 Generations Organic Farms, because along with your grain mill, you need something to grind. and 4 Generations Organic Farms is an excellent place to get high quality, wonderful wheat berries so you can start grinding those grains in your new grain mill and baking that delicious bread. Now, one great thing that I know that I love about 4 Generations is that they have really touched me personally. The fact that they have continued to sponsor me through this crisis that I've had recently where my husband was shot. I posted videos about that, and they've continued to support me personally as well as in business. And so for me, that shows me how great of a people that they actually are. They're really great people to work with. But also, their wheat berries are very clean. They are organic wheat berries, and they're shipped straight to your house and reasonably priced. And bonus, we're supporting farmers who believe in regenerative farming here in the USA and supporting our American farmers. So be sure to check them out. Just go to grainsandgrit.com/4generations. I got a coupon code for you for those of you who are purchasing for the very first time. And thank you so much to 4 Generations Organic Farms for sponsoring and supporting Grains and Grit. Okay, so now what you have been waiting for, the one simple question that you need to ask yourself when deciding upon what grain mill to get. And it really just boils down to this. Do you want fine flour every single time with just a simple push of the button, easy peasy, no problem whatsoever? Or do you want the ability to grind grains from coarse grains all the way to fine flour and everywhere in between? That's what you have to figure out. So if you just want a no fuss, I want fine flour that's perfect for bread baking every single time, and I just have to push a button, the Impact grain mills are for you. And now you have to decide between Wonder Mill, Nutri-Mill Classic, and the Impact. But you're going to want to stick to an Impact grain mill. Spoiler alert, that's actually what I use on a regular basis here in my house. I am regularly using Miss Wanda, and she's been my workhorse ever since I started milling my grains over a decade ago, because it's fast, it's easy. I throw in my grains, I walk away, and I know that I'm going to have the flour that I need that is perfect for bread baking. If the answer is to the second part, where you want the versatility, say you like to make grits, cream of wheat, maybe you like to crack grains to feed your chickens, or whatever the case may be, then a stone grind mill is for you. Just know that with stone grind mills, you have to adjust the stones every single time pretty much that you're wanting to use it. So especially if you're switching back and forth between those settings, and you kind of have to learn where it's got to be for that. So it's a little bit more of a learning curve. Not difficult at all, but that is the thing, is it just needs a little bit more finesse and finagling each time that you grind. And I even do it, say, even if I'm only ever using it for fine flour, I still check the stones every single time. So a little hack with the Harvest here, Miss Nancy. Basically, whenever I'm just wanting the fine flour for bread, I rotate the stones, I turn her on and I rotate the stones until I start to hear a bit of squeaking with the stones. And then I add my grains, and usually that's perfect setting for fine flour. Now, right now, because I actually have Miss Nancy, my stone grind mill, set on the coarser grind that I need for grits, because we do love grits in our house and we consume them pretty regularly. And so I just keep her on that setting, so I don't really have to adjust every time. And the ability for me to go back and forth, save that time, is excellent for me. But do know that I did use the Nutri-Mill Harvest exclusively for a solid year when we were in the rental, and I couldn't have all my grain mills out, and it was just fine. It did not add hours to my day having to adjust the settings each time. Frankly, it's just more convenient. So there you have it, y'all. If you are still overwhelmed, I still don't know what grain mill to get. Do know, with all the grain mills that I have mentioned here, and I will be linking them all down below for y'all of the places where you can get them, as well as any coupon codes that I may have, description box below. But do know, with any of these brands, Mock Mill, Como Mill, Nutrimill, Wondermill. You purchase from these companies, you're really not going to go wrong. They are excellent grain mills that have really stood the test of time. They've been around for quite a while, with the exception of the Impact, but Nutrimill as a company has been around for a while. And so really, you just need to get you a grain mill that's going to get you the grains and the fine flour to start your milling journey and start that baking. So don't stress out too much about it. So there you go, y'all. Let me know in the comments below if you've already purchased your grain mill. Let us know which grain mill you chose and why you chose it and what you love or hate about it to help the other people out who may be looking for a grain mill. That'll be very helpful for our community. And if you already have a grain mill or you're about to get one, I did a video all about maintaining that grain mill to really extend the life of it and just take good care of your investment. You can check that out right here. And as always, I hope that y'all have a wonderful day. I'll see you next week. Bye.